Bull charged at everyone, until a black homeless teen whispered in its ear. The bull rammed into the rusted metal gate with the full weight of its monstrous body, sending a deafening clang through the air and knocking one of the ranch hands flat on his back. Dust exploded in a cloud as men screamed, some diving for cover, others too frozen in fear to move. The gate rattled again, barely holding, the hinges shrieking under the force. Beyond it, the bull snorted, muscles rippling, blood smeared along one flank from where it had gored a steel fence post moments earlier. Its massive chest heaved with every breath, its eyes wide and wild. Brimstone wasn't just angry, he was unstoppable. "Back away!" someone yelled. "Get away from the pen!" But it was too late. The next second, Brimstone vaulted over the weakened barrier with terrifying speed and power. The metal cracked and folded like paper as the bull landed hard on all fours, kicking up stones and dirt. He spun, his heavy hooves carving into the gravel, and charged straight at a parked feed truck. With a shuddering crunch, the bull's horns punched into the side of the vehicle, crumpling the metal panel and blowing out a tire with a violent hiss. A ranch hand, no older than 20, tried to dart across the open field toward the barn, but Brimstone turned on him. The young man screamed, tripped on a fallen rake, and lay there shielding his head. At the last possible second, another worker flung a water barrel off a cart to distract the bull. It worked. Brimstone swiveled toward the movement and charged again, crashing into the barrel with such force that water exploded like a geyser into the dirt. Sheriff Clancy's voice came loud through the din. "Call the vet! Get a tranquilizer! Do it now!" A worker ran toward the radio station inside the main office, shouting into his walkie. But then came Jasper Wilkins, the owner of the feedlot, storming in with a shotgun slung across his shoulder and sweat dripping from his temples. His shirt stuck to his chest, and his boots kicked up dirt as he walked. "We don't have till evening," Jasper growled, glaring at Clancy. "He's gonna kill someone!" The sheriff raised a hand to calm him. "I already put in the call. Best we can do is stall until—" Brimstone rammed into another fence post, splintering it, and let out a roar that echoed through the valley like thunder. "He's not gonna wait," Jasper muttered, clutching the shotgun tighter. Off to the side, unnoticed by most, a figure stood alone by the wire gate. The boy's shoulders were narrow, his hoodie torn at the sleeves, and his shoes looked like they'd been pulled out of a dumpster. A beat-up backpack hung low on his back, the straps frayed and one pocket flapping open. He had dirt on his cheek, a bruise on his knuckle, and a kind of stillness about him that didn't match the panic around him. They called him Kid. That's all anyone knew. No one remembered when he arrived in Burnridge. He just showed up one morning and never really left. Some folks said they'd seen him sleep in the hayloft of the old Wilkins barn. Others thought he was a thief or a drifter. Most simply ignored him. But now he wasn't moving. He just stared at the bull. Marcus's mind buzzed, not with fear, but something deeper. A memory clawed at the back of his thoughts. That scar under the bull's eye, the way it kicked its back hoof 3 times before charging, the uneven rhythm of its breath. He'd seen it all before, years ago, on a different ranch, in another town, with someone who wasn't alive anymore. Brimstone snorted again and started pacing. Every man nearby took a step back. Someone whispered, "He's gonna charge again." Without a word, Marcus dropped his backpack, stepped off the gravel path, and walked toward the broken fence. Heads turned. Someone shouted, "Hey, kid, get back!" But Marcus kept walking. Jasper cursed under his breath. "Who let that boy through? Grab him!" 2 workers ran forward, but Marcus had already slipped through a side gate, his footsteps quiet in the dust. On the other side, the bull froze. Its nostrils flared, its massive head swinging toward him. Everything stopped. Even the wind seemed to die down. Marcus raised his hands slowly, fingers open, his hoodie sleeve flapping. His eyes locked with the bull's, and for the briefest moment he could feel it. The fear, the confusion, the rage boiling underneath. It wasn't just a wild animal. It was lost. Just like him. The bull lowered its head slightly, snorting. Marcus took a step forward. Gasps rose from the men behind the fence. Jasper raised his shotgun, but Clancy stopped him with a hand on the barrel. "Wait," the sheriff said, eyes wide. "Just wait." Marcus moved closer, every step slow and measured. He could feel sweat sliding down his back, his hands damp. One wrong move, and Brimstone would tear him apart. But he didn't hesitate. He began to whisper. His voice was low, almost inaudible. A string of words meant more for the bull than for anyone else. "It's okay, it's all right. You remember me. You have to." Brimstone's hooves shifted. He pawed at the ground, a low grunt rumbling from his chest. Dust swirled around his legs. "Easy," Marcus said again, just above a whisper now. "You're not alone. Not anymore." He stopped just inches from the animal's snout. Brimstone loomed over him, breathing heavy. The bull raised its head slightly, and then, with a deep huff, lowered it back down and stood still. Marcus reached out, his fingers trembling. He touched the bull's cheek. Its skin was rough, warm, and shivering with tension. Behind them, silence fell. No one dared speak. Jasper lowered the shotgun. Clancy took a cautious step forward. Marcus didn't speak again. He just kept his hand there, his heart pounding in his ears. And then slowly Brimstone leaned into his palm. A few of the ranch hands gasped. One dropped to his knees. Another began muttering prayers. Clancy turned to Jasper. "Did you see that?" "I saw it," Jasper said, stunned. "But I don't believe it." Marcus still hadn't moved. He closed his eyes, breathing deep. His fingers were still trembling, but not with fear. He knew that look in the bull's eyes. It wasn't rage, it was memory. He'd seen it before, in someone else's eyes. He'd seen this look before, in someone else's eyes. 2 hours later, the dust still hadn't settled over Wilkins' feedlot. Though the bull had been calmed and contained, the energy around the place remained electric. Workers limped across the grounds, clutching bandaged arms or bruised ribs. Paramedics moved quickly between those injured, while the sheriff's deputies directed the growing crowd of reporters and curious townsfolk away from the outer fence. The air was thick with heat, noise, and questions. But in the middle of it all, Marcus sat quietly on an overturned bucket near the barn, elbows resting on his knees, head lowered, as if the entire world had fallen away. A camera flash startled him. One of the reporters, a wiry man in a vest that carried more pens than necessary, leaned in with a recorder. "Son, can you tell us your name? How'd you do it?" Marcus didn't answer. He blinked slowly, like someone waking from a dream, and turned his face away. Sheriff Clancy stepped in. "Back off," he ordered, placing a firm hand on the reporter's shoulder. "The boy's not answering questions right now." "But Sheriff, I said back off." The reporter scowled but moved away, grumbling to himself. Clancy turned to Marcus, crouched beside him, and offered a water bottle. "You all right, kid?" Marcus took it, nodded once, and drank. The water was warm, but it soothed his dry throat. He didn't speak, but the way his fingers curled around the bottle revealed the tension still in his body. Clancy sighed. "Name, that's all I'm asking." "Marcus," he said finally, his voice rough but clear. "Marcus what?" He shook his head. "Just Marcus." Clancy studied him for a second, then stood and walked away, muttering something under his breath. A few feet away, Jasper Wilkins stood with his arms crossed, staring at the boy like he was seeing something from another life. "He just walked up and touched it," Jasper murmured. "Didn't even flinch." Sheriff Clancy nodded. "Like the bull knew him." "Yeah." Jasper's brow furrowed. "That's what I don't like." Later that evening, after the reporters had been pushed out and the workers were resting or gone home, Jasper approached Marcus again. "Place is a mess," he said, "but you saved some lives today. You need somewhere to sleep tonight?" Marcus hesitated. Jasper pointed a thumb toward the house. "Got a cot by the mudroom. Clean sheets, window even opens." After a pause, Marcus gave a slight nod. That night after dinner, which Marcus barely touched, he sat alone on the porch steps of the ranch house. The moon was high, casting silver light over the fields. Crickets chirped somewhere beyond the fence line, but the night felt still. Peaceful, almost. Yet in Marcus's chest, something itched. A thought he couldn't shake. A possibility that seemed too impossible to be true. He stood up, barefoot, and walked down the path toward the barn. Inside, the scent of hay and sweat lingered in the warm air. Brimstone, no, Justice, his mind corrected, lay curled in a thick bed of straw, his breathing steady, chest rising and falling like a sleeping beast from a storybook. The dart gun had never been fired. No one dared try to sedate him again after what had happened. Marcus stepped softly through the barn, stopping just outside the stall. The bull lifted its head at the sound, eyes calm now, not wild like before. Its massive body was coated with sweat and dust, but those eyes, deep, brown, and watching, seemed familiar. Marcus crouched, one hand resting on his knee. "Is it you?" he whispered, not knowing what answer he expected. The bull gave a soft, heavy exhale and nudged its muzzle through the slats of the gate, bumping his shoulder gently. Marcus froze, then smiled. It wasn't just recognition. It was reunion. In another part of the house, Jasper stood at his office phone, talking in a low, angry voice. "You told me he was from a breeder!" Jasper hissed. On the other end of the line, Doyle Creeley sounded annoyed. "That's what the paperwork said. Registered, branded, clean. Don't lie to me. That kid. He walked up to Brimstone like he was family. The bull didn't even blink. You sold me a problem, Doyle. A stolen problem. Relax. You're covered. I'll handle it." "You better," Jasper growled, slamming the receiver down hard enough to rattle a framed photo nearby. But Doyle wasn't planning to handle anything quietly. He made a second call, not to the police but to two men in another county. Men who didn't ask questions. Men who had helped him move other livestock that shouldn't have existed on paper. That night, close to midnight, Marcus was half asleep on the cot Jasper had given him when he heard a soft thud from the direction of the barn. At first he thought it might be one of the ranch dogs, but then came a metallic click. He sat up, heartbeat climbing. Barefoot he slipped outside into the night air. Moonlight guided him down the path. The barn door was ajar. He heard a grunt, a whispered curse, then a hissed instruction. Marcus crept closer, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. Inside, two men in black hoodies moved quickly. One held a long dart gun. The other was looping a thick lead around Justice's neck. The bull thrashed once, snorted, but was clearly groggy, already hit. "No!" Marcus breathed. He ran forward. The lead man turned, startled. "What the?" Marcus screamed. "Get away from him!" The bull, half sedated, groaned and swayed. The second man turned, raising the dart gun again. Then the first man stepped fully into the light. He froze. The dart gun dropped an inch. "Marcus?" Marcus blinked, stunned. The man's face, older now, harder, but unmistakable. "Cody?" Marcus's voice cracked. "What the?" The man stepped back, lowering the gun. You're alive?" Everything around them seemed to vanish. The barn, the bull, the second man backing out of sight. All Marcus saw was his cousin, the one who disappeared 2 years ago, the one who left with Marcus's uncle and never came back. The same cousin who'd been there the night their ranch was torn apart. The air pulsed with silence. "Marcus?" he said. "What the?" It was Cody, his cousin, the man who vanished 2 years ago with Marcus's uncle after stealing cattle. The man Marcus had assumed was dead. The wind howled through the open rafters of the barn, stirring loose bits of hay and dust as the two men took slow, unsure steps backward. One of them, the taller of the pair, still held the rifle in a trembling grip. Marcus didn't move from where he stood, barefoot, his chest rising and falling, body planted firmly between the bull and the intruders. "I didn't know you were still alive," the man said, voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. Marcus stared at him through the moonlight, his face pale and unreadable. "I thought you were dead," he replied flatly. "Guess we were both wrong." Behind him the bull groaned and shifted, its breathing ragged. The dart had weakened it, but not brought it down. Its eyes blinked slowly, confused and glazed. Marcus could feel the heat of the animal's body just behind him, and his own heartbeat pounded harder with every second that passed. The man with the rifle, Cody, hesitated. His hands twitched. The other man, already stepping toward the exit, hissed under his breath, "We need to move." But Cody didn't answer. He kept staring at Marcus like he was seeing a ghost. Heavy footsteps suddenly echoed from the direction of the ranch house. Gravel scattered under boots, and then came a low, urgent voice shouting from the dark. "Stop right there!" Jasper Wilkins charged into view, his shotgun drawn and ready. He slowed as he neared the barn's edge, aiming into the shadows. Cody didn't wait. He turned and sprinted out the side, the other man close behind. Marcus tried to follow, but by the time he reached the stable door, headlights had flared across the yard. A dark van sped off down the dirt road, tires kicking up clouds behind it, taillights vanishing into the trees. Jasper reached Marcus seconds later, eyes scanning the ground. "What happened? You all right?" Marcus nodded, but his jaw clenched. "They were taking him. They almost got him." Jasper's voice dropped low. "Did you see who it was?" Marcus didn't speak at first. His mind was still reeling, his body still tense. Then he said, "It was my cousin." The next morning, the ranch was quiet, too quiet. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at the sunlight crawling up the wall. Jasper paced nearby, phone in hand, occasionally muttering to himself. Eventually, he gave up and dropped into a chair across from the boy. Marcus finally spoke. "My dad, he had a ranch out in Eastbridge, not big, just 40 acres. He raised one bull from birth, named him Justice. He said that bull was born with fire in its chest. Always said he was special." Jasper nodded slowly. He didn't interrupt. 2 years ago, after Dad's accident, things got bad. My uncle came around, offered to help. He brought Cody with him, said we could sell the bull, fix the roof, maybe keep the land. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. But one morning, they were just gone. Truck, trailer, Justice, everything. No one would listen. No one cared. Jasper rubbed his chin. "And you've been living on your own since then?" Marcus nodded. "Different towns, barns, odd jobs. I just kept looking, until I saw him again. Here, that's not Brimstone. His name is Justice. My dad raised him." Silence filled the room. Then Jasper stood up and walked over to the landline. He punched in a number he hadn't used in years. "Elijah," he said after a beat. "I've got something you're going to want to see." Elijah Brandt arrived by early afternoon, dust covering his boots and hat, his truck engine still ticking as he stepped out. He was a tall man in his 60s, back slightly bent, but his eyes sharp as nails. A former rodeo champion turned advocate for livestock rights. He had once owned bulls like others owned dogs. Now he worked to protect them. Marcus watched from the barn as Elijah approached the stall where Justice lay resting. "He's strong," Elijah muttered, running a hand gently along the bull's neck. "Still has fire." "He remembers me," Marcus said softly. Elijah crouched near the bull's front leg and pulled a small brush from his pocket. "Let's find out if he's who you think." After several minutes of careful brushing near the hoof, Elijah sat back. There, faint and nearly erased by time and wear, was a barely visible brand burned into the hide. MB07. Elijah exhaled through his nose. "MB for Marcus's dad, I'm guessing." Marcus nodded. "Well," Elijah said, standing slowly, "your father's mark is here, and that means this bull was stolen." Jasper, standing in the doorway, let out a long breath. "So that paper Doyle gave me was fake?" Elijah looked over his shoulder. "Worse. Forged and buried under 3 layers of fake ownership. Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide this animal's past." Marcus's fists clenched. "Why?" The older man met his eyes. "Because someone didn't just steal a bull. They stole a fighter, a champion." Jasper frowned. "He's not a rodeo bull." "No," Elijah agreed. "But he was taken into the underground ring. Iron rodeo, they call it. Illegal fights. No rules, no records, genetic modifications, betting done through the dark web. I've been chasing whispers about it for years." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Elijah's tone darkened. "He escaped from a fight last year. One of the handlers was trampled. Since then, they've been trying to find him. They've already lost too much money. That's why Cody was here. Not just for revenge or family, but business." Marcus looked at Justice, who was now standing weakly on all fours, sniffing at a bale of hay. "I don't want money," he said. "I don't want headlines. I just want him back. Officially. I want his name cleared." Jasper stepped forward. "We'll file paperwork, property reclamation, theft report. Elijah, you'll back it?" Elijah nodded. "I'll do better. I'll call in favors, lawyers, activists. We'll make sure this boy gets what's his." But Marcus wasn't done. "I want to find Cody." Jasper blinked. What? He's not just moving animals. He's part of something worse, and I'm not letting him disappear again. Elijah met Marcus's gaze and gave a slow nod. Then let's go to work. That night, as the paperwork was started and calls were made, Elijah worked his network of informants and old contacts. Within hours, word came back. Cody was a middleman for Iron Rodeo. He didn't just move bulls. He trained them, altered them, sold them for fights that ended in blood. And Justice, he was their champion. The undefeated bull who escaped after goring a man nearly to death. The one that vanished in the middle of a high-stakes tournament. The ring had been hunting him ever since. And now that Marcus had found him, the ring would come hunting too. Marcus had unknowingly just stepped into a war. The courthouse steps were crowded, though the morning was crisp and quiet. A light wind tugged at banners posted outside the Burnridge Municipal Hall, the courthouse doors now flanked by 2 uniformed officers tasked with crowd control. Most of the townsfolk stood gathered below the steps, neighbors, ranchers, teachers from the local school. People who, just 3 weeks ago, had barely noticed the quiet boy who once slept in an empty barn. But now, all eyes were on Marcus. He stood straight-backed at the top of the stairs, a folded set of papers clutched in one hand. Behind him, Elijah Brandt rested both hands on a cane, and Jasper Wilkins stood with arms crossed, the proud look on his face more like a father than a rancher. Reporters hovered just outside the police tape, cameras clicking, pens scribbling, hoping to catch the moment that had become bigger than any of them expected. Justice was parked just off to the side in a custom-fitted trailer, tail swishing gently as he munched on hay. His frame, once battered and frantic, now looked solid and calm. He wore no muzzle, no restraints, only a padded harness and a brass plate with his name etched carefully into it. Justice, MB-07. The courthouse doors opened. A clerk stepped out with a short nod. "It's official," he said to Marcus. "Ownership granted." Marcus didn't smile. Not yet. He looked down at the paper in his hand, stamped, sealed, and dated, and exhaled slowly. A gust of wind rippled through his hoodie. Jasper leaned close. "You sure you want to say something? You don't have to." But Marcus nodded. "I do." He stepped forward to the top step and faced the crowd. Most of them had seen the footage, read the headlines, or heard the story whispered in town. But no one knew the truth like he did. Marcus cleared his throat. "People said he was dangerous," he began, his voice steady but low. "They called him a monster. But monsters don't remember who they are. They don't come back." He glanced toward the trailer where Justice stood with his head raised. "They made him that way," Marcus continued. "They forced him to fight, to hurt, to forget. But when he saw me, he remembered. That's why he stopped. Not because I tamed him, because he remembered who he was." There was a pause. A few camera shutters clicked. One man in the crowd gave a slow nod. Another murmured, "Amen." Marcus folded the paper, turned, and walked down the steps without another word. The next few days in Burnridge were quiet. The kind of quiet that only follows a storm. Word had spread fast. Local news covered the story of the boy and the bull with a mix of awe and disbelief. A few people came by the ranch asking for interviews, but Jasper turned them all away. Elijah spent most of his time managing the legal transitions while the sheriff's office finalized their own investigation. Marcus didn't talk much. He spent his hours cleaning the barn, helping with feed deliveries, and checking Justice's condition. The bull's strength returned quickly, his shoulders broadening again, his posture confident. But his eyes remained soft around Marcus, and every evening the two could be found side by side in the pasture, one sitting, one standing, both quiet. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, Sheriff Clancy called Jasper. "They got him," he said over the line. Marcus stood in the doorway as Jasper hung up. "Cody?" Jasper gave a solemn nod. "Waverly, warehouse on the east edge of town." Later that day, the full report came in. Police had raided a property tied to Doyle Creeley's name. Inside, they found nearly 24 bulls, some drugged, some injured. Scars marked their bodies. Metal crates lined the walls, and blood-stained fighting gear was packed in crates ready for shipment. A chalkboard in the office listed names, fight records, betting odds. At the top of the list was Brimstone, undefeated. Cody had been hiding in the back, trying to erase data from a laptop when they kicked the door in. He confessed everything. How he and Marcus's uncle had taken Justice after the accident, promising to find a buyer. How they were approached by Doyle. How Justice was forced into fights under a new name. How Cody stayed on with the ring after Marcus's uncle vanished. And how, when Justice escaped a year ago, they'd been searching ever since. "He was our ticket out," Cody had said in his statement. "A bull like that? You don't just walk away from that kind of money." The trial moved quickly. Public pressure mounted, and Elijah's influence helped bring attention from state authorities. The Iron Rodeo ring was dismantled, its leadership scattered, several arrested. Records stretching back years were uncovered, proof of animal cruelty, illegal trades, and gambling operations run across state lines. At the trial, Marcus was asked to testify. He wore a plain black shirt and boots that Jasper had given him. When he stood before the courtroom, he didn't look at Cody, not at first. He looked at the judge, the lawyers, the dozen people seated behind him. "My dad raised Justice like family," Marcus said. "He taught me that animals remember how you treat them. When Justice was taken, I thought that part of my life was over. I didn't know how to move forward. But when I saw him again, I didn't have to say anything. He remembered me, even after all they did." He finally looked at Cody, who stared down at his lap. "That bull didn't just survive," Marcus finished. "He came home." Cody was sentenced to 9 years in state prison. Doyle was still being processed for federal charges. The rest of the ring was gone, but Marcus's story wasn't over. Months passed. The barn where Marcus once slept in secret had been rebuilt. Jasper insisted on it, said he couldn't stand seeing the place in ruins. What was once a pile of dust and hay bales was now a clean 2-room cabin with a porch, working plumbing, and a wood stove. Marcus lived there now, waking early, working full days on the ranch. He'd taken a job training livestock, not for shows or competition, but for rehabilitation. With Elijah's help, they opened a small center on Jasper's land. Bulls that had once fought in cages now spent their days learning how to graze again, how to trust. Each one had scars. Some never calmed down, but others, like Justice, thrived under the new care. Justice remained by Marcus's side. Wherever the boy went, the bull was never far. Sometimes he followed like a dog. Sometimes he stood watch at the edge of the property, like a sentry guarding something sacred. He no longer reacted to loud sounds or strangers. He'd become something else, whole again. Children from nearby schools came to visit on field trips. Marcus would walk them through the pens, showing them how to approach the animals, how to read their body language, how to treat them with patience. He never raised his voice. He never rushed. And always at the end, someone would ask the question, "How did you calm him?" a boy might say, pointing to Justice. Marcus would smile, scratching Justice behind the ear. "I didn't tame him," he'd say, voice soft and sure. Then he'd look out at the land, remembering his father, the long nights alone, the path that brought him here. "He remembered who I was,"